What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Tech Planet. Today is another pothos propagation experiment. Let's check it out. Alright, so this might seem like a weird experiment right off the top, but someone requested it in the comments and I thought it was a little quirky and very interesting. And because I've been building a lot of stuff for the plant room, I have lots of sawdust sitting around, so I thought, why not give it a shot? I really do enjoy trying different substances and different methods for propagation just because it might help someone in the future, or we might find like a new magic material that really helps out. So in order to prep the sawdust, it's obviously like bone dry right now, so I'm going to add some water and keep mixing it up until I get to a pretty good consistency. Now, this is a lot like sphagnum moss in the sense of it soaking up water, and you don't want it to be like mud. Well, I mean, that could be another experiment, but from my findings, most of the time, if you're using some sort of like organic material, you do want some airflow in there. So I'm mixing this up just to make it sort of wet and crumbly, but I don't want it like soaking wet like mud. Again, there has been a lot of comments on a lot of these experiment videos, and many people want to see different species being used. It's a little hard for me to come up with many cuttings of tons of different species, but at least for this one, I'm going to do a different style of pothos. This is Mandula, and I'm going to do Monstera addisonii. So at least we get two different varieties here. So to get this started, all I'm going to do is place them where their actual nodes are underneath the sawdust and buried pretty well. And then we're going to do what we usually do, and that's let it sit under a grow light for about 15 hours a day and check on it over the periods of time. I am going to keep this in a bag just to provide a little bit more humidity. I do not want it to dry out instantly, and for me in my life right now, it's tough for me to be super precise with watering, so this will give me a little more leeway and it shouldn't dry out instantly. So you probably don't need this, but it'll make it easier for me. Alright, so about 15 days have passed. Because it's not a clear like cup of water, it's hard for me to see right away if things have happened, so I gave it a little more time than usual. So again, 15 days have passed. So let's take a look. I did want to kind of confirm that the humidity in the bag wasn't enough to make these things root, so I had an extra cutting and I've just had it in the bag sitting there, not in the substrate, just to kind of show you that it's not just bag humidity that's allowing these to root and that the substrate is actually doing something. So let's get them out of the sawdust, clean them up, and let's see if we've seen any progress or any rooting. Looking at the sawdust really quickly though, I don't see any mold or anything. It actually seems quite normal. I was a little nervous that this like organic material would start breaking down, but it seems to be doing okay. This sawdust is pine sawdust. These are from 2x4s, by the way. Just from a quick scan or pass of the camera, I can already see that there is root growth on all of them. Maybe not all of them, but most of them do have roots starting, and they do look a little funny. But let's take a closer look. So looking closer, you can see almost every single pothos has rooted quite a bit. They are much faster than the monstera. However, some of the monstera ones have rooted pretty well as well. Some have not at all, but I think they'll catch up as time goes on. And I think a little bit of it has to be like where it was placed and how deep it was placed in the sawdust. But overall, they're all rooting well. The only weird thing is the growth is a little funny, and I think some of the sawdust is getting stuck into the roots pretty good, giving it a strange appearance. But it looks okay to me. So let's rebury them and see what happens in a little more time. Alright, it's been almost an entire month since we put these in the sawdust, and do notice that the bag is already unzipped. That's how I've been keeping it, just to allow some air in there, but still maintain a decent humidity. Alright, let's start off again with this one that's just been sitting in the bag. I just wanted to prove that the humidity wasn't what was allowing them to root, and in fact it is a substrate. This one has done nothing, and it's actually quite dry, so even though it's a little humid in there, it's not doing it much. Alright, let's get these out of the sawdust. Upon pulling them out, I can feel a few of them actually gripping in, so I do know there must be some root growth in there. So let's check it out a little closer. On the initial scan, you can see there are quite a lot of roots growing, almost equal growth from both pothos and from the monstera. I think there is one monstera cutting that's a little bit behind, but for the most part they're looking pretty good. Now I'm going to clean them off real quick with some water just to get some of that sawdust off so we can see what the roots really look like. Starting off with just the monstera addisonii, we are doing pretty good. I mean, the roots are almost 2 inches long, they don't look like they're rotting too much, and there's new growth sprouting out of the nodes. So I would say so far it's a success. However, the roots are looking a little brown in certain areas, but that doesn't always mean rotting, so I'm not too paranoid about it, and I think for the most part they're doing okay. The roots are a little more springy, if that makes any sense. I don't know if the sawdust is kind of pushing it in a certain way, but they are a little odd. When looking at the pothos, the roots are not as long as we saw in the monstera, but they are a lot thicker and again a lot more springier. It's a little weird, and it could be just a species thing, so I'm glad I tried 2 different species on this one. But the pothos are definitely doing good. Many of them have multiple roots and they have some new growth starting, so I would say so far it's successful. Alright, skipping ahead a little bit more in time, we are at about a month and a half, a little shy of that, from our initial propagation. So let's get these out of the bag and let's check them out. Again, let's just start off with the one that's been sitting in the humidified bag. Obviously nothing has really happened to it. It looks drier and drier every time, so we can pretty much assume that this substrate is actually doing something at least. I already pulled them out and sort of pre-cleaned them so you can see just the roots and not have to worry about the sawdust, and from afar they all look pretty good. I mean, again, the roots are a little more brown than I usually see, but they seem healthy to me, except for maybe a few spots. When looking closer, you can see they all did get good root growth. They all do have new node growth, so there's going to be a new plant there, and for the most part they're doing okay. However, I don't know if I would call this really a success. Again, a lot of these plants, these aroids, you can root in pretty much anything, so it's not like, I don't know how else to explain it. I think you can get away with a lot of different materials and it will work to some extent. Basically, any medium that can allow some air in there and hold some water will do pretty well. But for this one, I definitely would never use this again. I don't think this is a really good method. I think more fragile plants are going to struggle a little bit. But again, they do look okay. I mean, it works. If for whatever reason you can't get your hands on any perlite, sphagnum moss, coco coir, vermiculite, there's a lot of other things out there. You could use sawdust if you really wanted to. However, this is not my recommended or go-to procedure. I do like the idea of reusing the sawdust, however, because most of the time it gets thrown out, burned, or just like recycled. But I doubt most people are actually recycling. It just ends up in the garbage. So I want to continue this experiment and mix it into the soil and just see if over time it can provide extra nutrients or what kind of effects it has on the plant. So I'm going to mix some of this up and just pot it up with some regular mix that I would use for these style of plants, some potting soil, perlite, maybe some other chunky stuff, but I want a good 50-50 mix so we can just see what kind of effects it has over time. I don't know if pine has any special properties. I mean, I know it kind of does, especially like pine needles and stuff. I know they're pretty toxic to plants around them, or at least that's what I've heard. So I'm curious what will happen over time, but I'm hoping that the wood starts to break down and just become a good organic material for the plants and doesn't just kill them. So we'll see over time. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. I did think it was quite interesting to try a more non-conventional substrate. It sort of worked. I mean, I think you can propagate a lot of things in different substrates. I definitely wouldn't recommend this, but we'll see how it does mix with the soil. Maybe that extra organic material might break down over time, giving us like more nutrition, but I'm not really sure, a little skeptical, but we'll have to see and find out in the near future. I hope you guys enjoyed this fun experiment, and if you have any other suggestions for different propagation experiments, let me know in the comments, because I'll definitely give it a try. It was a lot of fun to do this one, and I'm willing to do other kind of wacky stuff, so just let me know in the comments. And as always, may your plants grow strong and healthy. I'll see you next time.